I am glad you have gathered here with me today so that I may tell you all an important story. It is the story of the prodigal son. And though at first it may seem like a simple tale, there is a lot we can learn from this story. I want you to listen closely so that we all might learn an important lesson about how to live a good life from the story of the prodigal son.
What does the word prodigal mean?
Great question, Peter. Prodigal is a word for someone who spends a lot of money they don't have on silly things and is too fond of wasting money.
Aha!
Well, the story goes like this. Once upon a time, there lived a family, a father and his 2 sons. They lived together in a nice house and were helped by the couple of servants they had. They were not extremely wealthy, but their father was a wise man who made sure to save up as much as he could to make sure that the family would be supported once he was gone. The 2 sons both helped their father look after the house and farm the land that they owned. They owned goats, sheep, and cows, and the boys helped their father make sure that the animals were always well fed and well looked after. The father loved his sons deeply, and although the sons loved him back, they were not perfect. The younger son was known for being prodigal, or very wasteful with money. Any time he got some money, he would usually spend it straight away. He wasn't good saving up his money the same way that his father was. Over time, the younger son began to feel frustrated with his work on the farm. He longed to be rich and live the extravagant life of his dreams. He knew that his father had been saving up money to leave behind for him and his brother. And he decided to go and ask for his portion of the money early.
Father?
What is it, my boy?
I have something I want to ask you.
Ask away.
Well, I know that you have been saving up money for my brother and I for quite some time.
That is true. I want you boys to have a comfortable life once I'm no longer around. That money will keep you both safe.
Well, that's the thing, Father. I was wondering if I could maybe get my inheritance early and take my portion of the money now.
The father was surprised by this request, as he had planned for his sons to get their inheritance after he had died. He wasn't expecting to hand over their inheritance while he was still alive. He was a bit worried, for his younger son was known for being irresponsible with money and spending too much too often. But the father respected his son's wishes and went to divide up what he had saved.
Okay, son. If that is what you wish, I'll give you half of your inheritance now. I only hope you make good use of it.
Oh, thank you, Father. I will finally have the money to live the life I dream of.
But it was only after a few short days that the younger son announced he would not be staying. He was going to take the money his father had given him and travel to a faraway land.
Goodbye, everyone. I'm off to seek adventure in faraway places full of excitement and riches.
The rest of the family was sad to see him go, but did not try to stop him. And so, the younger son did as he said he would. He rode off to a distant land and sought out all the pleasures this new life had to offer. He spent money on fancy food, expensive drinks, big parties, and many other things that would not please God. He did not pay attention to how much anything cost or how much money he had left. It was not long before the prodigal son realized that pretty soon all the money his father had given him was about to be gone. When the prodigal son spent all his money, he became desperate. Quickly, the memory of the fine foods he had eaten were replaced by hunger, and there were no more parties for him to distract himself. The prodigal son went to look for work wherever he could find it. Eventually, he came across a pig farmer who would allow him to work for him.
Times are tough, boy, but I can try to spare some food for you if you're able to watch over and feed the pigs.
It wasn't much, but the prodigal son was happy to have a way to feed himself.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
And so, for a time, the prodigal son worked as a pig farmer in exchange for tiny pieces of food. But during this time, a great famine struck the land, and food became even more difficult to find. The farmer could not give the prodigal son as much food as he needed to stop being hungry all the time. One day, the prodigal son caught himself watching with jealousy as the pigs ate their scraps. When he realized that he was feeling jealous of the pigs for the scraps they were given, he knew he could not remain like this. He thought of the servants back at his father's house and how they were always treated with respect and had enough food to eat. He instantly regretted abandoning his father's household.
I have wronged my father by taking my inheritance and leaving to live a life of sin instead of taking care of my family home. I will go back and offer my services to my father as a servant and hope that he finds it in his heart to let me back into his home.
And so, the prodigal son made his way back to his father's household. As he neared the home, the prodigal son grew even more afraid that his father would reject him and not allow him to work as a servant. But before the son even reached his home, his father spotted him and ran happily to greet him.
Father, forgive me. I should not have left and been so prodigal with my inheritance.
But the father did not care. He was just happy to see his beloved son again.
If you will forgive me, I wish to work as a servant for you and make it up to you.
No, my son,
You need not be sorry, and you needn't work as a servant either. I'm just happy to have my son back."
The father was so happy that he ordered the servants to prepare one of their finest cows for a big feast dinner to celebrate. The older brother was working in the fields when he heard that his brother was back after wasting all of his inheritance. When he heard that the father was going to reward the prodigal son with a feast, he became angry and went to confront his father.
"Father, what is the meaning of this? Why are we throwing a feast for my brother when he acted foolishly and wasted his inheritance?"
The father calmed his eldest son and explained,
"Because, my dear son, for a time we had lost him completely. It was as if he was dead, and now we will feast to celebrate that he is alive again."
And that was the tale of the lost prodigal son who returned home.
And what can we learn from this story?
This story teaches us to be grateful for that which we have lost, especially when it is returned to us. The father knew that even though his son was not perfect, it was more important for him to treat his son with love than be angry at his prodigal spending. Even when someone has acted badly, when they decide to change their lives and become a better person, like the son did, it's important to support that change. This is how God views us, even when we do bad things. As long as we decide to become better, God will show us love and acceptance, just like the Father did to his Son. Listen, my friends, I have an important story I wish to share with you. It teaches an important lesson about how we must treat others in life. It is the story of a very rich man and a poor beggar named Lazarus. You see, this rich man was very rich indeed. All his life, he had lots of money and enjoyed all the finest things life has to offer. He ate the most delicious food, wore fine jewelry of gold, silver, and diamonds. Even though purple dye is very expensive and normally only worn by royalty or very important people, this rich man didn't care and spent lots of money so he could wear the fanciest purple clothes. He had a giant mansion, by far the biggest in town. He used it to throw big, fancy dinners with lots of exotic food and held spectacular parties for all his friends. Never did this rich man spare a thought before he spent any money. The rich man had everything he could have ever asked for in life, and everyone was very jealous of the luxury he enjoyed. But not everyone in the city was as fortunate as he was. Just outside the magnificent mansion owned by the rich man, there lived a poor beggar named Lazarus. His life was full of pain and suffering, and he had not a single possession to his name. All he wore were torn rags, as he had no money to buy clothes. Living on the street made him sick, and his body was covered in painful sores that never seemed to heal. He lived among the wild street dogs who would come up to him and lick the sores on his body. Whenever Lazarus did find food, the street dogs would fight him for it, making him even hungrier and even weaker than he already was.
I am so hungry, and I feel so weak. I have done everything I can to try and live a good life, and yet here I am. If only someone would take pity on me and spare me just a scrap of food.
As Lazarus lived and begged at the east gate, just outside the mansion of the wealthy man, Lazarus would sit and watch all day as deliveries of fine food, jewelry, and other treasures arrived at the rich man's house.
Look at all these fine gifts that pass in and out of these rich homes each and every day. Oh, if only I could taste even a bite of the fine foods that they must be eating.
Lazarus was so hungry that he dreamed of eating just a single crumb from the rich man's food. As he would leave to go about his business in the city, the rich man would pass Lazarus at his front gate. Lazarus would see the wealth of the rich man and beg him even just for some crumbs.
Please, sir, could you spare me just a scrap of food? I'm so very hungry.
But the rich man did not care. Every day he ignored the pleas of poor Lazarus and continued to enjoy his life of luxury without a care in the world.
Even though they pass me every day, not once have the people from these fine houses even looked in my direction. My hunger and suffering means nothing to them, even though we are practically neighbors and we are both children of God.
One night, his life of poverty reached its end. Lazarus died, and his spirit left his body. On the very same night, the rich man also happened to die. Finally, Lazarus's many years of suffering had come to an end. His spirit arrived at the gates of heaven and was greeted by Abraham himself to live in eternal bliss.
Where am I? Who are you?
Welcome, my son, as you have arrived at the gates of heaven. I am Abraham. I am one of your ancestors, and the first of God's chosen people.
But as Lazarus was welcomed by Abraham at the gates of heaven, the rich man found himself in the pits of hell, surrounded by fire and suffering. The rich man watched as Lazarus entered paradise and called out to his ancestor Abraham for help from the flames.
Please, Father Abraham, have mercy on me. Allow Lazarus to dip his finger in water and come down here and cool my tongue. These flames are so hot. I am here in agony and wish to cool down.
But Abraham could not help the rich man.
My son, Do you not remember when you had all of the finest things in life, and poor Lazarus here had nothing at all to his name? He suffered each and every day, while you lived in total luxury. He lived just outside of your doorstep, and you had plenty to spare. Yet did you ever stop to help poor Lazarus through his suffering when you could? No, you didn't, and so now you can never cross the great gulf between us. The gap between heaven and hell is too great, and you must live a good life to enjoy the kingdom of heaven once you reach the afterlife.
The rich man realized how he had misused his life of luxury and began to fear for his family.
Then please, Father Abraham, send Lazarus to the house of my father. If Lazarus speaks to them, maybe he can convince them to change their ways and live more virtuous lives so they may live forever in the kingdom of heaven.
But again, Abraham could not grant the rich man what he asked for.
Alas, my son, your father and brothers already have the word of Moses and all of the other prophets before them to offer them this very message, and yet they have not listened.
But if they see Lazarus rise from the dead to give them this message, then they will be sure to listen and change their ways.
But Abraham explained to the rich man,
My son, if they do not listen to Moses, if they do not listen to the prophets, then one man rising from the dead will surely not make them listen.
And so Abraham left the rich man to face his fate and joined Lazarus again in the kingdom of heaven. And so, that is the story of Lazarus and the rich man. In the afterlife, the rich man found himself with nothing but suffering, while Lazarus enjoys an eternity of comfort and satisfaction. Let's discuss what we can learn from what happened to them.
Even though the rich man had every privilege in life, he shared no respect for God or care for his fellow man Lazarus.
Yes, once we die, we can no longer rely on the material goods of life to bring us comfort and happiness. Only by living a good life and caring for our fellow man can we make sure that we live forever in peace in the kingdom of heaven.